Now we should be online. I welcome everybody to the second day of our Baroque Oboe workshop, which is part of a workshop series of the Resound project, which is funded by the German Ministry of Culture and Medias. Yesterday we had a more practical session. Today we will be joined by Lola Soulier, now we should be online. I welcome everybody to the second day of our Baroque Oboe workshop, which is part of a workshop series of the Resound project, which is funded by the German Ministry of Culture and Media. Yesterday we had a more practical session. The workshop. So have fun.
Thank you very much, Luca. Welcome also from my side. My name is Clara Blessing. I'm very honored to be invited to lead this weekend's workshop. As you've just said, yesterday we've worked together on articulation and other essential topics for the music making of the music of the 18th century. And of course, as we've already discussed yesterday, a big and very crucial part for double reed players when it comes to articulation is the reed making and are the reeds that we are actually playing. So we are very excited and very happy to have you here, dear Lola, today. You are actually not here, but in Armenia. And it's fantastic to have this hybrid scenario, to have you tuned in from your home in Armenia. Lola, you've studied both modern and baroque oboe. You were born in Paris, but you lived and worked in Germany for quite a long time. Also a couple of years in Köln, where we are now. So we send you many greetings from your former hometown. And you've also told me that you have worked with Concerto Köln as well. So that's a very nice connection to have you back here. Over the past years, Lola has developed more and more interest in the history of the oboe and historical reed making. In that context, she works together with instrument makers. She is making copies of 18th century oboes for the Musée de la Musique Philharmonique de Paris and the Centre de Musique Baroque in Versailles, and she gives lectures in different scenarios. Currently, Lola is working on her doctoral thesis at the Sorbonne Université in Paris. Now, as I just said, Lola is living in Armenia, where she can follow her researches with instrument makers of traditional wind instrument. She is here today to allow us an insight into her research, to tell us how she is working, which sources she uses, and of course, which conclusions she draws from her research. After her lecture, we will of course have time to ask questions and to discuss this very important issue. And I already would like to invite the viewers online to take part in the discussion. You can tune in the back channel, in the Zoom back channel that you find below the YouTube stream. But now, Lola, I hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Clara. Thank you for inviting me. And indeed, I know the room where you are sitting quite well from rehearsals and wonderful events, so I feel home. I've lived for 12 years in Cologne, and with my family, we moved to Armenia exactly 1 year ago. So thank you, everybody, and thanks to Concerto Köln for this wonderful opportunity to share with you my research on historical reed making. I will explain to you my own method. It's based on historical, written, and material sources, but also enriched by actual knowledge in Armenia, the knowledge of duduk player and duduk reed maker. They make their reeds with arundo donates, and also briefly Italian knowledge of Chiaramela, Zamponia instrument makers and players. I am not a bassoonist. I don't know how to make a bassoon reed, but I will give you a brief overview of bassoon methods, and I want to thank Jean-Marie Heinrich and David Rachel for their great help in compiling the bassoon sources. Oh, sorry. Yes. So I will show you my research with stick. Now I hear some noise, but I think it's okay for you. Cane harvesting and drying methods, dodging, making the reed, adaptation of the finished reeds to the historical oboe, historical fingerings, and in the end, articulation, sound quality, expression. And I enjoyed greatly watching your workshop yesterday about articulation. At the end of my lecture, I will relate also to your work and presentation, Clara. How did I start? Sorry, I just have, yes. My research, it was in Cologne in April 2011. I graduated from the Bremen Musikhochschule in Baroque oboe in 2010. And then I moved to be a freelance oboe player in Cologne, and I played indeed with Concerto Köln, and with my husband, David Melkonian, who is a cellist, we rehearsed with friends the Mozart oboe quartet. And in the fast passages in the high register, when I was practicing, I was very frustrated because with the long fingerings I was using on my copy of a classical oboe, I didn't manage to play really fast and really it was not clear enough. And the other problem I had was my reed was too difficult to play to really work on articulation and dynamics. So I was, I must say, very discouraged, and I was almost thinking just to quit the oboe. And David came into the room and I told him, that's it, I am not good enough, I can't, it's too difficult. Even if I had already learned how to play professionally. And he said to me, just check in some good ancient oboe method, maybe you will find interesting information. And this is what I did. I opened the Garnier method because it's the time of Mozart, and I checked the fingerings in the high register, and you can follow with me the high B flat. The first fingering is a short fingering, the high B, it's also a short fingering, and the high C, it's a long fingering but without any key. And when I played the same passages from Mozart with those fingering, it was logical and easy. So I used those fingering in the next rehearsal, and it was immediately a huge difference and success, even if the intonation was not right. So I decided to do a research about the Garnier method and to make copies and reeds that allow me to play those fingerings and to find a way to have a more flexible reed. So I did, it took me 8 years, and in 2019 at the Sorbonne, I submitted my master's thesis on the method of Garnier. So for those who don't know this method, it's the most comprehensive method about oboe with a lot of information. We know which oboe Garnier played. It's a Christophe Deluxe oboe, and we even know the proportions of the oboe he played. In the museum in Paris, there are 2 Christophe Deluxe oboes from the same proportion. So I decided to make copies of those 2 oboes. I was greatly supported by the museum, by Stéphane Weidelich and Thierry Maniguet. And we made those copies with Bruno Salençon, a folk oboe maker from the south of France, and Marc Recochard, a baroque oboe maker. Sadly, both have passed away recently, and but they have been a tremendous support and help in my research. We even have the drilling tools from Deluxe at the museum in Paris, so we used them and copied them to finish the copies. And very important, in the Garnier method, he shows the tools he's using and even the proportion of the reed. So if you check the original edition, you can measure how long is the reed and the staple. Now, as Clara said, I am writing my doctoral thesis, and I work closely with the museum in Paris and the Centre de Musique Baroque in Versailles. who is now leading a fantastic project about French ancient oboes. I will tell you more about this later. Under the direction, my thesis is under the direction of Achille Davirigo and as co-tutor Thierry Maniguet from the museum. So today we are going to talk about reeds, and for oboe and bassoon player, this is crucial topic, even if you are playing on the modern instruments. But if you play in ancient instruments, it's even it gets more complicated because we play a lot of different instruments, and especially when it comes to trying original instruments, you have to figure out which kind of staple conicity is matching the conicity of the bore of the instruments, etc. So it's really helping if you have a lot of knowledge about this. I'm going to quote first Karl Almenreda, famous bassoon player, who says actually the same thing. The bassoonist, even when arriving at an advanced stage through study and practice, must nevertheless depend to a great extent upon his reed. He may have one of the finest instruments and may be in a perfect mind for playing. Sorry, I have, yes. But if his reed is defective, he will remain its slave, a slave who has no freedom of movement. It is therefore indispensable, even if one does not want to make his own reeds, that at least an exact knowledge of reed construction be acquired, if only to be in the position to indicate to the maker the exact dimensions required. It's exactly the way I felt actually when I played the Mozart quartet. I felt I had no real freedom of movement with my reed. The quality of the reed depends first and foremost on the quality of the cane. So Arundel-Donax is actually a graminée, and we will take a closer look about Arundel-Donax. The question one has to ask is first how to properly cut, try and store the cane for the optimal vibrational characteristics. And I've been doing a lot of research recently about this topic. Another nice image about Arundel-Donax. And here you see Arundel-Donax in real conditions. The photos, the pictures are taken from Donati Reed's website. So it's in the south of France, in the Var. What do the ancient methods tell us about the time of harvest? First, they say that the time of harvest, no, not the time of harvest, the importance of the cane. So this is from Fröhlich. Also, proper harvesting and preparation of the cane are very important. The most important thing for anyone who wants to make their own reeds is to have good cane. Otherwise, all the effort and work will be fruitless. And here I compile also different quotations who just confirm the same. From Pierre Cugnier, Le Basson. As the reed is made from cane, the quality of the sound it produces also depends on the quality of the cane used. Garnier again, about the corrections you do at the end when you finish your reed. All these corrections are useless if the cane is of bad quality. And then clarinettist Joseph François Malot, the goodness of a reed depends primarily on the choice of the cane from which it is made. So now I come to the informations in the historical sources. Joseph François Garnier writes, the cane to be used must be taken from southern countries, and from these countries the best is that which has grown in a ventilated area. It must be cut in the autumn, a little before the frosts. Henri Brod, in 1835, a little bit later, the cane must be cut at the time of maturity of the fruits. It can only be used for 2 or 3 years. After this time, the sap being dried up, the reeds that would be made from it would be far from having as beautiful a sound as those that would be made from a more recent cane. Josef Senna in Vienna, 1825. Take a cane that is well matured, but not too old and faded. The best is one that has matured during a hot summer in an airy place and has been cut before the end of autumn. And there is a revised edition of Sellner from Richard Rosenthal in Germany, published 1901, and the text about the harvest are still the same. Jean-Xavier Lefebvre, clarinetist in 1802, writes, "The difficulty of having a good reed comes from the fact that it is rare to find good cane. They are cut either too green or too dry. Green, they are spongy and make the sound dull. Dry, they lack sap to provide the necessary vibrations. So one should not choose a cane that is too green or too dry, nor of too coarse or too fine a grain." What is the modern practice today? The information I'm showing to you are from the Donati Reeds website, but this is general method. Everybody does the same nowadays in the plain cane plantations. The cane is cut during the winter period when the plant is in vegetative rest. There is an article from John Reid from 1983 where he goes even more into detail. Since the harvesting takes place during the coldest months of the year, picking a pleasant day in early January provides good results. Conditions must have been cold for several weeks, which allows the sap in the cane stalk to return to the portion of the plants in the ground. When harvested too early, the sap remains and the cane stalks take on a greenish color, which no amount of drying or soaking can eliminate. Reeds made with this cane are never satisfactory. This is the way cane looks harvested in the winter. So actually you see on the picture that it's still a little bit greenish. And that's why in the professional plantation, the cane is sun-dried. From June to mid-August, the stems, also called sticks, are exposed to the sun around their entire circumference for final drying to obtain a golden color. And this is the way they are sun-dried. So for 2.5 months under very, very hot sun of south of France, which means that it's not only the color, not only comes from the sun on the surface, but it's extremely warm. So the cane gets also dehydrated. Sorry for my English. So now I will give you an insight into the modern practices in Armenia. And the interesting thing is that at first I was very surprised to see that the ancient methods all agree on collecting the cane in the autumn, but that we nowadays all agree that it should be made in the winter. And in Armenia, the cane, so it's also Argondodonax, for double reed making, is selected, cut in autumn, September, October. And this is Hovhannes Hudaverdian, who is a fantastic reed master in Yerevan, and I am extremely lucky to be working with him at the moment, and I learned a lot from him. And now I will show you a harvest in Iran. The Argondodonax is growing in the Karabakh, Artsakh, in Armenia, and since the war 2020, the reed maker cannot harvest cane in Armenia anymore. So that's why they have to go to planting in Iran. So this is Hovhannes. And another little.
Walked the water proper Lakshi, to the Zangu tonight. Gelen Dine Bäume namovețin ca să köprek Lavna se amishat Povoi Durgali sashat Stemez Lola de Jurasiele Yes.
Պատկաստան գելես, Պարսկաստան, եւ սիրած նվագներս միասին են գործը
You've seen Hovannes harvesting, so you see he's selecting each cane individually, and this is him. I choose this photograph because he has a very funny text in German. Liebe geht durch den Magen, so just extra for you in Cologne. It's interesting because Hovannes has been experimenting a lot. He is actually self-taught. So there is a tradition, there is some knowledge, but for him it was not enough. He wanted to gain the knowledge by himself and tried many different times of the year to make his reeds. And it's so interesting that he picked up exactly the same time than the oboe players from the 18th and 19th century. And last September, Hovannes collected cane from me, and he showed me how to sun dry it. And he said, like, you should never sun dry it too long or too directly under the sun. So you see it in my living room where I'm just now talking to you, and it's a few meters away from the window, and it's made cautiously, a few days, and you watch the color, but it should never be too warm. So this is also very different method for sun drying, and also the sun is not that strong in October than it would be in July or August. So how can it happen that in 1901 we still had this knowledge? It was normal knowledge to collect in the autumn, and we only know another method to collect in the winter. This is my interpretation now. I believe this has to do with the industrialization of reed making in the 1920s. And I recently found this brochure, which gave me very interesting information about this moment. When did it change? So this is approximately from the 20s. And this was made by Pichard, a clarinet player. He says that he's selling the best reeds in the world. Why? Because he's a soloist at the Opéra, at the Concert Cologne, and he's member of the jury in the Conservatoire in Paris. And also because he uses only dry cane, the qualité extra, he means extra dry cane. Now, he says, in all the cane that you've purchased until now was green. Which is really interesting. So it means that even until the 1920s, the professional reed maker were selling green cane. And he goes on, remarquez que si vous en avez trouvé qui jouent facilement à la première mission, elles perdent presque aussitôt toutes leurs vibrations, deviennent spongieuses et inutilisables. So even if you have had good experience with green cane and it had a easy vibration emission, they become spongy and you cannot use them anymore. So, renoncez à ces anges qui ne durent pas, nuisent à votre sonorité et à votre réputation. So, don't use this anymore. This is not good for your sonority and your reputation. And his reeds from Pichard are made with extra sec cane, ayant 4 années minimum. So they are also dry, like 4 years minimum. Now we go to this important criteria nowadays. It should be yellow, golden yellow. Remarquez sa couleur jaune d'or, son bois très dur dont les fibres sont extrêmement fines. So the wood is really hard and it has this beautiful golden color. And now it gets really a little bit weird. It says that the reeds are made from wood that is like les violons anciens des grands maîtres, faits de vieux bois précieux. Elles ont véritablement une âme. So it's like the old violins from the great masters made with old precious woods. They have a soul. And I find personally that here we lose ground with real knowledge. This is nice, this is beautiful, but this is completely out of place. Cane has nothing to do with the wood made for violins. There is one important thing, is that you see that he said those are the reasons why the best clarinetist and saxophonist say that my reeds are the best in the world. The important thing there is that if you want to make money selling reeds, you should target clarinets and saxophone player, but not oboe and bassoon player, who are a small community. And so from a financial point of view, we are not very interesting. So I think also the industrialization has focused on single reeds and not on double reeds making. And you can play, and you should play clarinet and saxophone with a cane that is more hard than not that soft. So for them it might be satisfactory, even if we have seen that Lefebvre was saying you should not cut the cane too green or too dry for the clarinet as well. But still, a dry reed is playable on a clarinet and a saxophone. For double reeds, it's a big problem. We need a lot of flexibility with double reeds. Yeah, so, and the conclusion is like, don't try hundreds of other type of cane. Just be confident in a way. And this is a bit our attitude nowadays. We think, good, there are some experts, some professionals, we should just trust them, and we don't try, like before, to have our own expertise, usually. And just to show you that they were also selling a reed for oboe, cor anglais, basson. So I believe this is exactly what happened during the 20s, industrialization. It was easier to make this very extra dry cane in big quantities. It does not require the same knowledge. If you harvest your cane in October, it's still alive, it has a lot of sap, and it needs great knowledge and great care. So this was no longer actually affordable for when you work with machine and you want a lot of efficiency. What about this idea to play on extra dry cane? Maybe it's a good idea. Karl Almenreda is talking about this, which means that there has always been people who wanted to play on dry cane, but there was a lot of resistance from the players who knew well about cane. So here is the expertise of Karl Almenreda. The only test which has proven reliable besides mine outlined above is the fingernail test. Run the thumbnail over the bark of the cane following its curvature and observe whether with normal pressure any mark is impressed upon the cane. If none is left, you can be sure that the wood is too hard. Although many still reply that the hardest, most solid cane is most suited to the making of bassoon reeds, I will answer that if such reasoning were followed to its conclusion, apparently even better reeds could be made from wood that is harder and more solid than cane. Personally, I would rather make my reeds out of a piece of pine wood, than use the hard cane which some bassonists use. And it's interesting because this is exactly the test that Hovernes in Armenia is doing. And showing me how to run my nail over the bark of the cane. And we do this for every cane before making the reed, and it's exactly what Almenreda did. So there is a common experience there. If you always use the extra dry cane of today, you might not try to do this test because on every cane it doesn't leave a mark, so it's not something relevant. And I want to stress again the fact that for each instrument you have to choose different quality of cane. Franz Josef Fröhlich writes, for the bassoon one should not take an overly mature and consequently too hard cane. The clarinet requires a firm cane, the oboe a somewhat softer one, the bassoon an even softer cane that is otherwise good and mature. To understand the differences between cane harvested in October or September and sun-dried in the autumn, and cane as we know it, harvested in the winter and sun-dried in the summer, we are very lucky to have a student, Leila Kadeh. She is doing now a final year project in chemical studies in Grenoble, in the Laboratory of Pulp and Paper Science. And she is studying the chemical and mechanical qualities of Arundodontax right now. This is going to be the first systematic comparative study of ancient and current harvesting and drying methods. So yes, I am very impatient to see what she will be discovering. She's doing chemical and microscopic analysis of cane, mechanical and rheological characterization. Very important point is the viscoelasticity of the cane, and also density and hardness measurements. And for this, she has the help of Jean-Marie Heinrich. She has just visited him a few days ago. I wanted to share with you those photographs in Mulhouse. And so they are now, she is now equipped for her study, and we will see the results quite soon. And for those who don't know Jean-Marie Heinrich, I can only recommend you his numerous articles and writings. It's fantastic. His surname by Riga is the Rohholzpapst, the Pope of cane. He is really one of the most knowledgeable person in the world about Arundodontax, and he's a bassoonist. So we want to know more about, through the scientific study about cane, but we also want to experiment. I am already experimenting a lot at home with all kind of cane collected in Iran, 1 year old, 2 years old, in the south of France, but we want to do it on a large scale with a lot of players. So if you are interested, we can talk about this later in the question and answer part. Thanks to the support of the Centre de Musique Baroque de Versailles and the Paris Musicology Research Institute, we are starting now a big project with cane harvested in autumn and winter. Donati Reeds is a part of this study. So Thomas Donati has been extremely open-minded and helpful, and he has collected cane for us in October 2021. Henri Maquet is a very interesting musician. He makes instruments with cane, and he has collected cane in the wilderness also in October 2021. And there is a workshop for oboe and reeds in Paris, Tout pour le hautbois, from Fabrice Rousson, and they will soon make available those different quality of reeds, of cane, sorry, on their website, and it can be ordered. I will show you. The harvest from Henri Maquet was made together with a baroque oboe player, Nevin Lesage, who is also the coordinator of a project that I will talk to you about later, from the Centre de Musique Baroque de Versailles and the Iremus. And Nevin even went with Henri Maquet to do this first harvest. So the idea is that you can order in the size that you need some cane harvested in autumn and cane harvested in the winter, the conventional one. And it will be for free. It's financed by the Centre de Musique Baroque de Versailles. But we ask for precise feedback. We want that musicians do instruments, a few reeds, they should be from the same dimensions, so that you can be able to compare the results and fill a form with your observation and conclusions. So we can talk also about this later. And finally, I am also now doing an art project. The working title is From Cane to Sound, Vibratory Qualities of the Oboe Revealed. It's a project funded by the French Ministry of Culture and administered by the Société Française de Musicologie. This is on this picture, the Lac Sévan in Armenia, and this is not the Arrondo Donax, because as I told you, there is no Arrondo Donax in this part of Armenia. It's the one, the Phragmitis for the Zurna reeds, but the picture is very beautiful. That's why I showed it to you. And this will be with Aha Collective, an art collective based in Yerevan, with Nairi Khachadurian, curator, Maïda Sharak, an artist, and my duduk master, Gevorg Dabarian, Rovanes, the reed master, and we will make an exhibition in Komitas Museum in Yerevan, and later on also in France. There will be a publication, and I think it's also important to have these parts to bring the beauty and the more sensitive aspect of this research to a large audience. There will be also a publication from the Komitas Museum. Now I will talk to you about gauging, the modern method, historical sources, and the method in Italy. Since also, I guess, the 1920s, we use usually the gauging machine. And the problem with the gauging machine is that it offers only one combination of gauge bed and blade side, so it's very difficult to try different profile. It was invented by Bod around 1830. And in the ancient music, from the beginning, the pioneer of ancient music have found that this is too restricted and tried a hand gauge. But the one they choose is not really a specific instrument, it's a carpenter's gauge, which is working. You see on the picture, you can gauge cane, but it wasn't designed primarily to gauge cane. So what do we see in the historical sources? We see this tool, a little curved knife, or here in the method of Rosenthal. Other example, Garnier, Rode, Salviani, Rosenthal. There is one example of longitudinal gauge. It is the only one I know. So I really believe that the normal, let's say the usual tool you would have chosen is this one. It was used also to make instruments, so people were familiar with it. You see in the encyclopedia, a kind of scraper used by musette makers to scrape certain areas of chalumeau and drones, but also to make the reeds. And this is a very old source, Instrumentellischer Bettelermantel, and it's also written that you should use Putzes mit einhalb runden Messer. We have difficulty sometimes to read because of... Anyway. So yes, the cane with a curved knife. And then we also have material sources. The tool from Frédéric Triebert, very beautiful. It's interesting because Triebert also had gauging machines, so it means that people were using both, maybe. So it's the fact that this tool disappeared. It's more recent, and you cannot really replace the hand gouge. You can use a machine, but I believe that you need this tool to be very flexible. And those are tools from the collection of Alfredo Bernardini, a very beautiful sculpture. This is a funny example from Barbara Gacciotto master's thesis. It's a gouge from Istria. The gesture is very easy. Would be better to show it to you in real, but I will show to you a video from an Italian instrument maker, and it's exactly the gesture what is described by Brod. And another. So this is a bit different now because he doesn't do like Brod, he puts his finger below, but basically it's the same idea. So I wanted to have this kind of tool, and I was very lucky to meet a great silversmith in Cologne, Misha Peteler. He has worked intensively with me. We have watched all these sources, and with his expertise of tools, he's been able to make gouges that worked very well. It was a long process. And it enabled me to get familiar with this particular gesture and to learn this technique. This is a funny photograph from a lecture I gave about the gouge in Boulogne-Billancourt. You see this is the big gouging machine that were used or still used in some factories. And you see here the baroque longitudinal tool and the tools reconstructed from the source. And now I am very happy because I'm working with a fantastic tool maker, Ruben Moucherian, and he's just made those tools together with me in March. This time I ask more specific things because I have more experience now, and I also wanted to develop my own tools. And I would say now with this complete set, I can gouge any size that I need to gouge for my reeds. So if you're a baroque oboe player, it means baroque oboe reeds, d'amore, caccia, classical, etc. And it goes very fast and it's very handy. So it makes you, it's lighter and I enjoy the process. And I can every time, according to the cane quality or to what I want to try, test things. So just with these few tools, I can try out everything that I need to try. I made this little construction photos just for fun, also with the knife, but for you to see. The only thing that we have not reconstructed yet is the limb, and we are going to do it soon, to have it with also a wooden hand grip. I want to talk briefly about this pen knife. It's interesting because at the time, in the 18th century, people would quill their own, cut their own quill to write. So they had a technique, everyday life technique for this, and also tools for this. And we know a lot about the gestures thanks to the writers' methods, like in the encyclopedia. And it's again like the gaucher, you pull towards you. And the analogy with the pen was made like in this method from Joseph François Malot from 1820, L'art de bien faire une anche de clarinette. Who to him who uses a reed that his hand has not shaped? An artist must know how to scrape his reed like a writer his pen. And Otzi, in this bassoon method from 1803, the reed removed, it must be turned over and held like a feather to be trimmed. With a penknife, remove the bark of the reed 5 lines from the first bridle, always notching further towards the embouchure. So this is the gesture from this beautiful detail from Rembrandt. And I have to say now I really do the lay this way. So you don't need to use a plate, and it's a different kind of control. So yes, you can try out. I find this very, very easy this way. This kind of lay or grattage has been widely used until recently. So you can even find in some more recent methods, now 1948, different kind of method how to make this special lay. And you can watch it on historical reeds. So those beautiful 6 reeds were with an oboe from Baptiste Desjardins in a private collection in Bavaria. And I went to see the reeds and the oboe, and thanks to Albert Vosseler, who is the great-grandson of the craftsman who collected those fantastic reeds and oboe, I could take the reeds and the oboe to the museum in Paris, and now it's part of the collection. They have purchased it, so anyone who wants to study those reeds together with this oboe, it's in the museum in Paris now. And watch the lay and the grattage, it's always the same principle. It's a V, and then you go gradually, as Ozzy say, towards the embouchure, towards the tip. This is also exactly what Hovhannes Roda-Verdian is doing with the duduk reeds. We can talk about this more in detail in the questions later on. It's very important to understand how this technique works. And those are reeds from the masters of the French oboe school beginning of the 20th century. So Georges Gillet, Bleuzet, Baget, Morel. You see it's always the same design. And then there is a gap. It's not made from it. It was Paul-Henri Goutard himself who made the gap. And then you have Pierlot. And this is the beginning of the modern scrape with a heart and with a W or whatever. So it's this tradition was changed around the 60s in France and a bit earlier in some other countries. So when you have the finished reeds, it's very important to know how to insert it in the ancient oboes. It's not like with the modern oboe that you just have a special place to put it. And Garnier is very precise about this. You have to check if the octaves are well balanced. And he also gives a few tips how to check if the reed is too light or offers too much resistance. I cannot go too much into detail. Now I leave it for the questions. The fingerings. Yesterday, Clara quoted the method from Trélon-Ponsin, and it is really a great document. And you can see that the high C on the baroque oboe around 1700 is all open. And this you will find written down also in the encyclopedia and in many fingering charts. I think it's very crucial when you make your staple in one piece that you have to find the right conicity with the oboe you're playing, with the copy you're playing. in order to be able to play the high C all open very easily, and also the other fingerings. But this is the test. And again, from Joseph-François Garnier, so here you see the F sharp, it's the old fingering that we know from the Baroque oboe charts, or called also the French fingering, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the B flat. It's very handy, you can play it fast, and it is a little bit lower than the one commonly used nowadays. And you see that until 1802 it was still used. And the high fingerings again. So we have the alternate fingerings, but the basic fingering also to play fast is the short one. Why do we not use usually this kind of fingerings? It's been tackled, this topic, by Bruce Haynes and Michel Piguet. Bruce Haynes writes in his article Oboe Fingering Charts in 1978. At the present time, however, most, if not all, players of the early 18th century oboe regularly use these more secure harmonic fingerings for the upper notes when they must be toned. The reason for this anachronism is one of the current mysteries in the field. Presumably, it has to do with reed scrape and or staple design, or possibly with the influence of our backgrounds on the modern oboe, which have led us to assumptions about blowing technique and embouchure which do not match the specifications of Baroque oboes. And Michel Piguet, in a symposium, International Early Dobro Symposium in Utrecht, 1994, goes on. The next part of my lecture drew heavily on the article that Bruce Haynes wrote in 1978 for the Galpin Society Journal on oboe fingering charts. Actually, nearly everything I said has been expressed in that wonderful article. I would like to make a parallel with recorder fingerings. On the recorder, the vast majority of players today are using the fingerings invented by Arnold Dolmetsch in the 1920s to produce an equal tempered scale. In contrast, the early fingering charts, in particular the refined one by Thomas Stainsby Jr. for the tenor recorder, and to some extent that by Gerbrand von Blankenburg, give different fingerings for each enharmonic pair of notes. I do think we can speak of modern and Baroque fingerings for the Baroque oboe too. My definition of Baroque fingering: one never used by a player of today. My definition of a modern fingering: one not to be found in any Baroque charts. The modern fingerings were used by the first generation of German Baroque oboists, then by Jörg Schäfflein and myself. So it's very interesting for us to understand that the pioneers of the Baroque oboe used those fingerings, used the double staple for their reeds and a modernized lay or scrape. But they did so because they had no time and experience to experiment at first. But both Michel Piguet and Bruce Haynes afterwards have tried to experiment and have they tried to go further than that, and it's already a long time ago, in the 80s and the 90s. So I think it's really a good time now for us, with all the knowledge we already have and the experience, we maybe have now more time and possibilities to try to go further. And there is another very interesting remark from Michel Piguet. Let me finally come back to flexibility. Good Chennai players in India can play as low as a minor third below the lowest note of their instruments with the same flexibility as the oboe virtuosi of the 18th century. Today, no Baroque oboist can do the same yet. It is my wish that Baroque oboists of the future aim for this flexibility, through which we will give more color and more liveliness to the sound of the baroque oboe. The lowest note on the baroque oboe is a low C that you play with the big key, and on original instruments it's too high for a low C and it's too low for a C sharp usually. And if you have a very flexible reed setup, it's no problem. It's like you can really, with the embouchure, play both notes, which are in the repertoire. There are some passages where you have to play the C sharp and also where you have to play the C. So it's also, even for this, extremely important, and also for the color and the liveliness of the sound. But this is my last chapter, sonority, articulation, expression. You see this famous plate from Backchannel, Traité de la Musette. This is the background, I would say. It's the same in Armenia, the duduk and zurna, and for us the oboe, considered originally as a shepherd instrument. And this is the atmosphere. So what were the sound characteristics of the oboe in the 18th century? There is this famous quote from Eisel: Man bedient sich dessen im Felde, in der Oper, in lustigen Kompanien und auch in den Kirchen. The oboe, the baroque oboe, was a fantastic instrument that you could play in the military, in the opera, for festivities, and also in the church. What about the sound of this instrument? Sorry, I have to remove. A dry and sour tone, writes Jean-Jacques Rousseau in the Encyclopédie in around 1765. Even if an oboe is exactly in unison with a flute and softens its sound to the same degree, the sound of the flute will always have something soft and mellow, and that of the oboe something dry and sour, which will prevent them from ever being confused. So it will be in sauer in German and aigre in the original version, sacré aigre. Why I cannot move? Yes. And you must know also this quote from Bannister, the sprightly companion, end of 17th century. For besides its inimitable charming sweetness of sound, when well played upon, it is also majestical and stately, and not much inferior to the trumpet. With a good reed, it goes as easy and as soft as a flute. And now I want to give you my interpretation of this quote. The sweetness of sound, I believe this is related to this shepherd atmosphere. The oboe is innocent, and in this way it is sweet because it's fresh. It has something childish. But this is my interpretation, of course. It is majestical and stately. It means that you can play really loud, like a trumpet, but you can play also very piano. I think it goes as easy and as soft as a flute. It means that you can play pianissimo. It doesn't mean it goes as mellow or it plays as mellow as the flute. If we try to really make the difference, soft can mean piano and can mean doux in the direction of mellow. But I think here it's quite clear that it is about the volume of the sound. And how is it that it could be played in the military? And for big festivities, it is because it has a bright tone, timbre éclatant. Again, Jean-Jacques Rousseau in the Encyclopédie, timbre, by metaphor, this is the name given to that quality of sound by which it is sour or sweet, dull or bright, dry or mellow. So you see the oboe is sour and dry, and the flute sweet and mellow. Those are always the couples. Sweet sounds are usually not very bright, like those of the flute and lute. Bright sounds are subject to sourness, like those of the vielle or the hautbois. And if you look at this, it's 1739. we are really in the time of the Baroque oboe. It's no longer the 17th century, and you see that they have the reed in the mouth, as far as I can see, and the 12 grands hautbois du roi are playing on horses with drums, and you can imagine the sound it produced. And also, if you play on horses like this, how flexible your reed must be to be able to perform like this. Imagine what you performed yesterday. Now do the same on horses with drums for a big, big ceremony. So that's the reason also why I am living in Armenia now, is because I wanted to learn the zurna and the duduk, to learn a tradition that is an oral tradition where you improvise, where the ornamentation is extremely precise and passed down from master to student. And I am very lucky. I have lessons with Georg Dabarian, who is a fantastic player and teacher of duduk and zurna. And with the zurna, I discover incredible vibration. When I have my lesson, it blows your ear. You get an energy that is incredible, makes you want to dance or to maybe to go to the military field with a lot of courage. And I believe the oboe is exactly in between. And I will show you a little excerpt where you see how this kind of bright tone gives you, you want to dance. That's the principle. And this is what our ancestors were doing, les mousquetaires du roi, les 12 grands hautbois du roi. So of course the oboe from the repertoire you played yesterday is not with a pirouette, so you control the reed with your lips, so it won't be that bright, but I think it goes in this direction. And Clara quoted the math lesson yesterday, a very important aspect, also what she said about the music that is speaking and not painted, but really this crucial element of language in ancient music, gleichsam redende oboe, the eloquent oboe. And I just add this today, after being inspired from your work yesterday. It was really, really interesting to follow your process together, speaking the turu, turu, turu. It's really, I guess it's a wonderful method. And it's practiced in India, the Konakol, and you can watch on YouTube, there are a lot of videos, it's fantastic. they speak the Didi take it, whatever. So we can do this with the turu turu or with crowns, and this is great that you started this work yesterday, and it's a big inspiration, and I think we should continue to do this on our instruments and collectively. And I will show you this was already planned. This is for me the Indian oboe, the Chennai, the best example of a speaking oboe today. And this was interestingly also seemed to be an inspiration to Michel Piguet. So even if we don't understand the Indian culture, you will see we do follow the storytelling of the musician, Bismillah Khan. when Matheson was struck by this speaking quality, this was similar to what we observe here. You hear the questions and answers. If it's witty, it's really speaking. And for this, you do need a very flexible reed to be able to play with the embouchure and so that the tonguing would be extremely easy and subtle. I wanted to finish to make you listen to some historical recordings, but it's not working technically, and anyway, I've been very long already. But just to show you, we have historical recordings from the beginning of the 20th century, and you remember the reeds are basically the same than the baroque oboe reeds, the lay and the grattage. So it's very interesting to listen to, especially for articulation, because the sound quality is not very good on old recordings, but the articulation you can really hear well. And there is one very old recording of Georges Gillet from 1905. You can even listen to it on YouTube. And there is a beautiful recording from the German oboist Fritz Fleming, who was a student of Gillet and worked a lot with Richard Strauss. And this you can find by Oboe Classics. Those are CDs from Oboe Classics with historical recordings, and it's very interesting to listen to this sourness in the sound and also the flexibility in the dynamics and articulation. So thank you very much for listening to this long presentation, and now I'm really looking forward to your questions.
Thank you very, very much, Lola. This was a lot of information and inspiration, I guess, for everyone. Also, incredible amount of sources that you have collected. And I was already thinking, but this is a little side note, maybe for us and also for everyone who is watching, maybe the two of us, Lola, you and me, maybe we can put together a list of the sources we have used. You have used today, and I used, of course, a little less, but so that everyone can get this information and this list of sources afterwards. I guess we will need some time for that, but maybe we can even put it under
surely put a folder with on OneDrive or something and put it in the video description.
Because it was, I mean, it was such an incredible amount of information and sources, especially, that it would be great to have a little collection or overview over that. But I'm sure we can do that and manage that later. Yeah, wow. I'm sure there will be plenty of questions. We have Linda here who will observe our channel. But maybe, if you allow me, I would start with the first question for you, Lola. I think we already discussed yesterday, and we were curious how your sound on the baroque oboe is like. I don't know if you have an example now, or if you could describe how your sound quality changed from like doing it the modern way to now doing it the historical way. Maybe you could start with that to give us an idea of how your sound sounds like.
Yes, so it wasn't. It's still on process. First, I played with reeds from Bruno Salençon. That's why I chose to make the copy of Deluxe with him, because he was making this traditional lay, and he was making his staples in one piece, so we could experiment a lot. And he made reeds for the folk oboes in the south of France, but it was really incredibly funny for me because he had a completely different idea of sound quality as a folk oboe player, and I felt so free, and we tried many copies and instruments with this, but the sound was a little bit raw. And it took me a long time to understand the new lay and grattage. And now I play on a copy of Antiuti made by Lucas von Helsingen. It's a special instrument because it's made out of ebony, so it's already a little bit hard. It's a beautiful instrument, but with my reeds now, it sounds very direct. So I think it's also a component to consider to play maybe on a boxwood oboe. That's maybe also one reason why they usually prefer the boxwood oboe. If you want to sound a bit softer and use a grenadille oboe for some more occasions where you really want to sound bright. So you can experiment a lot, as well as with the wood of the oboe. And now for me, a fantastic discovery is the cane quality. So I've been recently, I've made reeds with different cane harvested in autumn, and it's incredible. You don't no longer hear really the lay or grattage, but you hear the cane quality. And so with different cane, it sounds more mellow or more sour. So we have such a big panel of possibilities. And the more historical you are in your technique, the more you will try to find those quality of cane, wood, because then it makes sense. I hope I am clear. Because the reed is more direct and more sour, you start to have other priorities in which cane you choose. So I also believe that the fact that the lay, the grattage has changed in the course of the 20th century, it might have to do with the change of the cane quality. So I think it's extremely important, and I'm just at the beginning of this now, to have the matching cane quality for the historical scrape, let's say. And if you look at the knowledge and the care that Hovhannes takes for duduk reeds, it's amazing. It's taken in years of experimentation to find, and it's when he chooses cane and dry, and he is really individually cane by cane, because with this kind of scrape, so this is what you look for is that there is a perfect balance between the time when the sides close and the middle. And this is very concrete. This I could show you in direct if we meet with reeds. But this is nothing to do with historical or modern. This has really to do with the architecture of the reed. When you understand this principle and you know how to do it, it's very easy. And then you start to consider the cane quality. And that's why I think in the ancient treaty, they always speak about cane quality and very little about the lay. Because this is what you need. You need the perfect cane quality for your purpose, what you want to do, where you want to play. And it's different for the bassoon as for the oboe and the clarinet. So the way I sound, it's still, I would say for now, a little bit rough, because I haven't yet found the cane quality, but this is the next step now. And I believe with the right cane quality for my reed scraping and my embouchure and my oboe, then I can really answer you. But the good thing is that already in my experimental phase, when I had normal cane, the cane from today, I was already able to perform in concert and in recordings. And we did a recording with our orchestra in Cologne before we left Orchestra Kairos, which now no longer exists, but we did record an opera under the direction of Kai Wessel, and I played with this reed setup. And I have the recording of this. I could show it to you. And I like very much actually the sound quality. It's not, I want to improve this, but it's already very flexible, very bright. It sounds great in the ouverture with the strings. And my experience is that you can play pianissimo, which you need. You can't play as soft as a flute. So when you have to play unisono with violins and they play very soft, it's far more easier with this kind of reeds. So it sounds a little bit sour, but it's transparent. and also you can play much more loud, which is very just helping. Or when doing all the work that you did yesterday, this turu turu, then it will be just easier to make a difference. And I haven't worked now that as you did. I would like also to experiment, and thank you for showing this. This is exactly then the next step. When you have this kind of reads, you want to do this tiri tiri, tiri tiri, because you really hear the difference precisely, so then it makes sense.
Yeah, I think we all can confirm what you just said, that when it comes to super pianissimo places, these can be hard for us oboes to really go to this very low dynamical level. I don't know, how is it in for bassoon players? Is it, what would you say? Is pianissimo, is it easy on your reed system? How do you feel with playing pianissimo?
It's always difficult.
It's a difficult
It's
thing,
always difficult.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in the practice, when I was playing in baroque orchestras, I remember crazy situations. Once we were playing a beautiful piece from Handel with a big choir, and I was third oboe, I think, and I had a piano entry with the choir, and I loved this part because it was the only part when I had something beautiful to play. And the conductor told me, leave this passage, you are too loud. And I was so frustrated. I said, I'm going to play really, really soft. I put a handkerchief in the bell of my oboe. I muted it, and he said, okay, you can play, that's fine. And afterwards, the bassoon player went to tell me and say, oh, you're so brave. I also have to play just before your entry, but I never played. I never played because I knew that it's going to be too loud. So this is a common practice, that people leave some passage because they know they are going to be too loud. Or I know so many conductors, and I do understand them, who ask to mute the oboe because it's just too loud for certain passages, which is the consequence. I mean, if they ask us to leave the passage or to use a mute, it's because it's truly too loud. There is a problem. And with this kind of reeds, and that's why you have such passages in the repertoire, it's not a problem, for instance.
Yeah, well, I think we all can relate to your observations with regard to the function of a reed. We all aim for a clear articulation. We all want to play a wide dynamic range easily, hopefully. But at the same time, of course, the reed is not only a tool. I mean, it's not only all about the function, but of course it's a lot about the sound. That's why I asked you, how do you sound actually? And we had yesterday a discussion, which was not in the stream, but it came up later on that day, about the authenticity of sound. What makes a sound authentic? And that as a player, I think this goes for every instrument, but especially for singers or players like us, when we produce our sound with our own breath, we have to like our own sound.
Yes.
Because when we like how we sound, it's much more convincing. It comes much more from the heart, and then hopefully goes to the heart of our listeners.
Yes.
So I have to admit, actually, that, as I said, I totally understand the desire for a better function of the reed, but at the same time, I have to say I like my sound at the moment. So personally, I don't feel super strong this need to change my reed at the moment, because I like this round, warm oboe, baroque oboe sound. I don't know how you feel, or what your ideas are about your own sound, or what you can say to this, Lola, when you listen to recordings of the famous baroque orchestras of our time.
Yes.
Do you like the sound, or what is your impression then?
The interesting thing is that your perception changes. It's like with food. If you are used to very spicy food, you know, it's so, we are used to a certain sound quality, and then the first step is difficult. But then if you move, and if you also, that's also a good experience, you listen to Zurna, and then after that you play my reed on my oboe saying, wow, this is so mellow. It's always relative. And then you play the duduk, that's much softer, and then, you know, it's always in relation to what you know, but my experience is very positive, because when I played in orchestras, especially in Cologne, this recording of Greba, I played first oboe, and second oboe played Julia Bellis, and she played the same oboe than me, but with the modern reed setup. It was a fun experience. And people from ancient music were there listening, and I got some extremely good feedback. So actually, until now, every time when I have performed, I have had usually a very good feedback. And it's the time to talk about the project in Versailles, maybe. There is a general, I find in the air, curiosity for another type of sound. And the Centre de Musique Baroque de Versailles started a project about French oboes, and this was not connected to my research first. It was just by chance that we are working on the same topic at the same time. And so they are going to order copies of French instruments from the end of the 17th century until Rameau, which is a fantastic opportunity for players to try those instruments. I would say first, maybe you can just try and choose afterwards, or do both or whatever, but it's interesting to be able to experiment anyway. So now we are trying to reconstruct the oboe of the time of Lully, so it would be just perfect for your experience yesterday to have those oboes with historical reeds. I mean reeds with one piece staple and this kind of lay, and hopefully a very good cane harvested in the fall. Just try. Play the same piece, do the same work on the turu, and then listen to it also from outside, and how you feel, and then I think everyone can still choose what they want to do. It's like with the natural trumpets. There are trumpet players who play the natural trumpet without holes, and they play also the trumpet with holes, the modernized one, and it's like two sides of their professional life. And anyway, it does open a lot of technical abilities, refinement. If you try the historical setup, it will, I guess, only enrich your experience to play the way, which is absolutely legitimate, I find, to say, I want to sound like this because I play now. I do agree. I mean, it's a free decision, but it's, yes, it's helping a lot. And in Versailles, there are a lot of musicians or musicologists who work since years about the repertoire of the time of Lully, and the costumes and everything, and they have also a wish for a different type of oboe performance. They don't know anything about reed, etc., but when we talk, they say, yes, they know those pictures and this atmosphere, and they sense that something is lacking now when they hear the rock oboe. It's beautiful, but there is a wish from the audience and from other musicians and musicologists to listen to something else. So if ever someone is interested to go this direction, I can only encourage you, because we are gathering experience, knowledge, there are projects like the one in Versailles that will develop right now. So it's a good time to try things, and in the end you can still decide what you want to play when you perform in concerts, of course.
Yeah, what I'm wondering, or what we were discussing yesterday, is if we as players dedicated to historical performance practice, if we are in some sort also responsible for the sound idea that our audience maybe has, or if we can, like, maybe I say it differently, if we can educate our audience a little bit and lead them into another direction. I don't know, what do you think? I mean, we offer a sound that we are convinced of, that we like ourselves, but at the same time, how do you feel about it? How do you feel about it, Lola? Do we have the responsibility as players also to go in certain directions?
Maybe yes, because people who don't play the oboe and the bassoon just have no possibility to change something. So you can listen to historical recordings, of course, as the audience. You can choose. This is usually what I do in my personal life. If I want to listen to Mozart Zauberflöte, I will choose an old recording on modern instruments where I still hear the woodwinds have very different colors, because this is what I enjoy listening to. But it's a bit frustrating, because then what about when you go to listen to a live concert? So I think, yes, if we propose only one version of sound, of aesthetic on stage, it means that the audience has no choice. And as we dedicate our time to this, and we are the only one who can do it, it's good that if some of us offer a variety of interpretation, and there is a strong wish from the audience. I feel that the people are much more curious than we believe. At the beginning, when I started my research, many colleagues told me the audience don't want to listen to what you're doing. And honestly, I never made this experience. Even when at the beginning it was really rough what I did. I went through difficult times, just playing, but it's still not really good. But there was such encouragement, because people love. They say, wow, this sound. People who don't play music want to be surprised. They like when it sounds a little bit more like dudelsack, like pipe. It's of course you shouldn't. You have to refine it. It's a process, but if you look what people are doing in contemporary music, in popular music, there is definitely space for crazy sounds, for if people like electronic guitar, electric guitar, and we should try out different things, and the audience, I think, will only welcome this. Maybe the conductor at first will be a little bit, not everyone is interested in this, but you can perform chamber music first. This is what I do, or with your own. We had our own orchestra, so yeah, it's really. I think, but we are talking of now and of the future, and remember the wish of Michel Piguet.
Yeah, I think we all got inspired to try out things. I saw we have a question in the Zoom, but maybe first another quick question from me, and then I shut up. I was wondering because, of course, sound is also a question of the ensemble sound and of how it blends. You already said that you've made the experience that the blending with violins or flutes works very well. Have you tried it already, like in a section with double reed players who all use the old system? No, you didn't do this. Okay, so this is a project for us for the future, to really try how oboe band or how a double reed section in some orchestra repertoire would sound like if everyone did this. But okay, I'm silent now. I think we have a question there. Linda, would you read it for us?
I can read it out, sure.
Yes.
It's a question about cane production and harvesting. Lola, in your knowledge, how does differences in regional climates, temperature, humidity, etc., for example, south of France or Armenia, Iran, influence the winter-autumn harvesting? The person who asked that is Portuguese and plays a historical bassoon, and he is living in Belgium, and he plays exclusively with his own cane, and he is harvesting it himself and produces it himself in the south of Portugal. And the climate there is considerably warmer than in the south of France. He doesn't know what that would be like compared to Armenia. And there is no winter frost at all. He says it makes perfect sense what you said for him, for Armenia. But he dries his cane mostly in the shade, and to get a yellow golden finish, he needs very little and careful sun exposure. Otherwise, it would be way too hot. And he says, thank you for the amazing lecture.
Yes, thank you very much, Jose, for your question. So, the frost is an important thing because it's a good thing for you if you collect your cane in the winter, as you precise, and there is no frost. This is good because it means you won't have cane that has frozen. And we are not aware of this, but in the plantation in the south of France, where there is frost, a lot of cane is damaged by it, but we don't know when we buy it. So a lot of cane is just damaged because of the frost. So yes, it's really good if you can avoid this problem because there is no frost. But still, if you are looking for this kind of cane quality, the way Hovannes is doing for his own reeds, you will see tremendous change between September, October, November, even between 1 week. And also, we have to remember that the cane grows very fast. So it's like you know, some animals, they live just 1 day. So at the end of the day, they are already very old. So the cane is a grass, it's not a tree. So it's also much older 1 month later. It's also something to consider. It can have started to grow in April or in May, and then it's not the same age. And that's why it's so difficult. I want to stress it's not at all sufficient to know that you should collect your cane in autumn if you follow the historical source. This is just where the work begins. It's extremely difficult to choose the mature cane. So for this, you need to know what is a mature cane. And this is where you have to be flexible depending on the region where you are working. So to answer your question, of course it's different in Iran or in Armenia or in France or in Portugal. So it means you have to go there, and you cannot, if you don't live directly in the cane field, and let's say you have 1 week to harvest, then you have to be able to recognize which cane is mature and which is not. And this according to your wishes, what you need for your own reeds. So it's an art in itself. It takes really dedication and experience, and it might change from 1 year to another. So the ideal conditions would be to experiment as much as you can. This is what Johannes did. He tried to harvest in the spring, in the summer, then in the fall, and then he understood that it was better in the fall, and then that it was for him better end of September, for example, than mid-October. So this is really takes a lot of experimentation. The only time he never tried is winter, because already a little bit late in the autumn, for him it's too mature, it's too dry. But for this, actually, the only answer is experimentation. If ever you find a cane that's perfectly suited to you in the winter, why not? My experience is that with this kind of scrape and rig setup, that the cane quality that we buy today, it's too hard, it's too dry, and the sound correspondingly is too direct. But it takes so much research. That's why in Armenia you have a reed master and a duduk player. It's almost impossible to do both. So this is a challenge for us also, because we would actually need people to dedicate themselves to just do the harvest and the reed making, which is maybe possible, but it's not an easy task. And we will invite in the course of this CMBV project Johannes to come to the south of France next September, end of September, so that he can show us with our cane in the south of France which cane he would collect. And now he knows he does a lot of reed making with me, with my baroque oboe reed, so he really gets trained, and I think when he comes in September he will know which cane quality, for instance, for my reeds are the best, and then he will help us understand how to collect it. So I already have a lot of knowledge thanks to him. When I bring him the cane already cut and collected, and we do. He shows me where he looks, how he. The same thing with Almenreda. The tests. There are many tests that you can do to see if it's a good cane quality that you are looking for. But it's a big project. We really need to work. We need to go in the fields in the south of France, try out experiments. So the cane that you could now, if there is enough stock, order, has been collected in the autumn without any specific knowledge. It's just been cut, harvested in October. That's it, and a little bit air dried or minimally sun dried, but without any expertise. So this is also something to bear in mind. If there are very, very bad results, it might be because of this. So it's not enough to know, okay, maybe October is good and we cut it. You need to know which cane. It's the same if you would go to pick up apricots, and at the same day some are too green and too hard, and other are well matured, and other are just too matured. It's exactly the same. So you are there. For us, it's easy to pick up a cherry or an apricot, but it's much more difficult. It takes much more experience to see what is the mature cane.
Yeah, I can imagine that also an aspect that one should have in mind when talking about when we harvest our cane and what historical sources say, that we have to keep in mind that the climate in general has changed also over the past 300 years. I mean, now climate change is a super hot topic, of course. We can start to plant lemon trees in Germany, in northern Germany. So I guess, and we all know that, of course, the humidity, for instance, of the halls we play in plays a big role for the reeds as well. Like air conditioning that we have in big halls has a big influence on how our reeds function. So I guess it's not so easy to just follow the sources of 300 years ago, because these were reeds that worked well 300 years ago in that climate. But we have a super different climate around us. So I guess I was wondering, do you also keep that in mind, Lola? I mean, this adds a whole new dimension to this whole topic, and it makes it even more difficult. But I was just wondering.
I can be quite reassuring about this, because look, we still make wine, you know? It's maybe it will just change 2 weeks where it gets warmer in the south of France. It means for the winemakers they have to collect, to harvest maybe 2 weeks earlier. It's not that now we grow mango in Düsseldorf, you know, it's not this huge change. It's just that it's been always changing anyway. There have always been variations, very rainy years. It's also important if it rains a lot or not, you know. So you only need to know the area well, and then to go to pick up several times, like Hovannes did, you know, and then you will recognize, oh, in this part, it's already mature end of August, so I have to go sooner. Or on the reverse, say this is not at all mature yet, I have to go end of October. But thankfully, this is only this, you know, it's not dramatic, and you will be amazed to see the differences. I am absolutely amazed by the work of Hovannes between different cane. That's why the ancient sources talk so much about the cane quality, because really, and also maybe an important information for you all, is that the bassoon player, especially Amenreda, they used to buy their cane from, you know, before, this is the work and discovery of Jean-Marie Heinrich now that I am telling, to make a fabric, a woven fabric of silk, wool, cotton, the Kämme, they were made out of Arondodonax, which means that all over Europe you had huge amounts of those Kämme, what's the name in English? Peigne. And they needed to be very flexible. If you weave silk or wool, those little
teeth,
yeah, I don't know.
I guess.
Yes, exactly. Those little teeth need to be, they shouldn't break.
Yeah.
So it means that also they knew how, before they knew how to collect cane to make this flexible teeth, and they even had recipes how to make it even more flexible. It's written down in some old treatise. So there was a huge knowledge before about, we will call it now the viscoelasticity of wood. What makes a wood more flexible? This has gone lost through industrialization, modern industrialization. We need, I believe, to regain this expertise, this knowledge about elasticity, viscosity, elasticity, and this is a knowledge that's always widely developed, where people are still working manually, like Hovannes. He knows this. You would be amazed how he can, without modern machine or tester, tell you exactly what is the quality of the cane he has in his hand. He listens to it, to the sound it makes. He has many ways of recognizing it. So this is, in this way, we have, I think it's important to realize that we have lost this ability of observing, of feeling. and that it takes a lot of experience. Thankfully, there are still people nowadays like Hovanes. I am just so grateful, because just from the source I would be a little bit blocked, or maybe it would take me 10 more years. If you feel like it's taking me now 12 years to make for my research to be able to play in a satisfactional way. But then it will need for me another 10 years. I'm very happy that we can now move faster.
Yeah, it's actually fantastic that we can share this knowledge, and that we can profit now from this amazing work that you have done over so many years. I'm seeing that we have more questions in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
I'm also seeing that we have only 2 or 3 minutes left. So maybe I can ask you, Lola, if possible, to keep your answers short, so that we can round this up soon. Yeah.
I think this is not a question, actually.
Not a question, a comment maybe.
It's a comment about the little ice age that happened in the end of the 17th century.
Yeah.
Yes.
But look, in the south of France, it was warm. I mean, yes, maybe, but look at the fruits that grew there, and the way people dressed. I mean, it was not Denmark in the winter. So really, I would not. Let's try first and gain knowledge before we worry about climate change. Really, there is so many possibilities. If you just change the time of harvest, it makes already such a big change. So I would not worry too much. Let's try, experiment, and then it can still be a consideration.
Yeah.
But even if it's very interesting what Louis is writing, but the south was the south, the north, you know. It's, people never collected their cane in Edinburgh or.
Okay, so at the moment we don't see the comment here, but I'm sure we can save it for later. I guess it was a comment that relates to this question about climate change over the past few decades, centuries actually.
There is a comment now of Jose Rodriguez. Where he say, I get you, I've been cutting cane for about 14-15 years now, and I finally start to feel more confident. I will experiment to do an autumn harvest in the south of Portugal this year. I should have some result in the spring, summer. So yes, I mean, we have this information now. I shared it with you. We can first try, I think, and still, also about bibliography, what you said, my master's thesis is already written, so I could also share this with anyone interested. My master thesis, there is a lot of information about all those things, also reed making, and there is a bibliography, and I am now writing my thesis, so this will be also the aim of this thesis, to be able to have all this information written and compiled. So I need time to finish to write it, but it will be available in maybe 2 years.
Good.
But I could already share with the people that are interested in my master's thesis.
Yeah, I would really suggest, Lola, that maybe we do a little phone call later after this workshop is finished, and we put together a document with the sources and also with the possible ways to stay in touch with Lola. For everyone who is interested in her research, maybe you have some sort of newsletter or some way how we could follow your research. This doesn't have to be, we don't have to discuss it now because of the time management of today. But I will promise that you will get information from Lola and me, or Concerto Köln, or we can create a network or join the network that you already have, Lola. That is fantastic.
Yes, you can also always write me an email. There is my email address below.
Yeah, good.
And I live in Armenia, but I go frequently to Paris, and I will be in Cologne for 1 or 2 weeks in July.
Good.
And
there will be options.
so yes, just write me, and there are things that it's difficult to explain on the internet, but and also we want with the Centre de Musique Baroque de Versailles, this big oboe project, we are thinking about having a kind of platform when we keep people updated about what we have done and the instruments. So this will be also maybe a very interesting platform to follow.
Yeah, thank you very much.
From the oboe project.
Yeah, that's a good hint. We see this is a big process that is more or less, it has started already, but that is in the middle, and I guess we are all very curious which results we have to expect in the future. Do we have questions left here or in the channel? I think in the channel not here. I see happy faces. Good, okay, then Lola, thank you very, very much again for joining us. It was a bit on short notice, but even more, thank you very much for being here today, for giving us this very interesting insight. And let's keep in touch. Thank you also everyone watching now or later for your attention and for being there. Thank you guys here. We will now have a break. We will finish our stream. We will continue with some playing later. Thank you and goodbye, Lola and everyone watching.
Thank you so much, Clara, and also thank you to everyone. And please don't hesitate to contact me for any kind of information about what I have presented. I will be very happy to be in touch with you all.
Fantastic. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.